is it possible for us to try to experience them before drawing conclusions, before saying, hey, this is not something that you're supposed to be engaging with? What can games offer curriculum? And this is, I think, one of the bigger questions we have been grappling with both here and also in my new position with UK. How can we change how we teach things? How can we change assessments, assignments? And it's been really interesting to explore. So I have a couple of examples that you can see here. One is the game Wordle. I'm sure a lot of you must have given it a shot over the last couple of years. It became really popular during the first half of 2022, also during the pandemic. So the amount of people who have benefited with regards to vocabulary from Wordle has been significant. In my classes, when I've mentioned Wordle, I have students who show me, thousands of screenshots having played the game, talking to me about 5-letter words, asking me what kind of word were you playing today. Correct? I've never seen vocabulary become this kind of fun again. Correct? Especially considering for a lot of us, we think that habits like reading are beginning to become increasingly difficult. To find people who read, for example, right? And to think of vocabulary, to think of meanings, to think of new words, seemed so fun with Wordle. The other one example was Nerdle. A friend of mine called Bhargav, who teaches in Manipal, swears by Nerdle and talks about how useful it has been with regards to math and stuff like that. Whenever I try to solve Nerdle, it connects back to the foundations of arithmetic, which I've not touched in a long while. Also, I'm scared of math. But whatever be the reason, the fact that a lot of young people have benefited from games like Nerdle and have thought through how to solve a puzzle like that. Something interesting I also found as I was researching games like these was this game called Worldle, which was about trying to guess countries and places and trying to find locations. So every time you guess a place with a particular number of letters, it'll kind of give you a geographical location and tell you this many degrees of longitude wise, this many degrees of latitude wise, which would mean for a lot of people, even thinking of the globe or the atlas and connecting back to those things. It was really interesting. Okay, so coming back, so what exactly happens if you introduce games in assignments and assessments? So one of the bigger things I've noticed, at least with some of my modules now, is that we are taking away the stigma of film and we are getting people to experiment things, to take risks, and most importantly, try and solve the problem by thinking, hey, not thinking, hey, will I get the right solution, but rather thinking, hey, is there something new I can get out of this? Okay? Which also means that we are moving away from that focus of, numerous numbers of tests, right? If you look at the average school curriculum today, and I think they go through 7 or 8 rounds of testing in an academic, correct? And makes you wonder why even are they going through that kind of rigorous testing, correct? When I'm asking parents, people, young people I know, and they keep telling me, Aditya, the school thinks of test scores as data points. My question is that really what it was meant to be? Correct? Do we change the way we think even of tests? Because what value of scores if you have a test every 3 weeks? What is the learning that's happening? Right? And these are bigger questions to think about. Correct? And something else I found, and this is first-hand through my classes again, it has allowed teaching to become more experience-driven because as they think through, as they solve problems as games, as solutions to games, even play through it. Correct? The classroom has become extremely inward. Right? So students keep fighting back, they're discussing, they're contesting the classroom space. Correct? And sometimes they just stand back and let them run with it. Correct? So you might be thinking, what kind of games am I talking about? What is it that I'm doing? So I'll give you an example of something that we were working with. Correct? So before that, correct, the big question is, what can we kind of do? I think it's high time that we begin acknowledging that games are here to stay. If you look at the size of the industry, I think it makes more money than the television and film industry combined today globally. So I've mentioned this many, many times. So I don't think it's going anywhere. So by acknowledging that they're here and knowing that we can't really get rid of them, if we start looking at what positives we can get out of the media, I think that's one way to correct. Then once we kind of look at those positives and what possibilities that they can offer, if we can involve them in the way we think of classes, the way we plan sessions, correct, and the kind of activities we want to use, then we use video games as foundations to initiate discussions. And how could that kind of be? That should be interesting. So the one example I was telling you guys about was this thing where I use video games, this one specific game called Beecarbonize, to handle this issue of climate change. So it's in this module I teach at Exeter called handling the climate crisis. Correct. So where I kind of ask students if it's even possible to avert the crisis at this point. Okay. So the game we look at is called Beecarbonize. It's made by a Czech-based company, and it was funded by the European Social Science Research Council, ESRC. Okay. So the game kind of works with these kind of cards, correct? And each of these locations, as you can see, industry, ecosystems, people, and science. The game kind of looks at these as pathways to try and solve the crisis, correct? And you see the number here at the top where the mouse is. That's the number of years that it will take you to try and solve the issue, correct? And each time you play and each act you take and each possible card you unlock kind of tells you how you can combat the climate crisis. So what I found really interesting was how they were not just talking about the climate crisis, but also about all the other aspects that go into trying to fight this. How would industry play a role? How would ecosystems kind of be balanced? And could local solutions and indigenous knowledge give us some way of fighting the climate crisis? Correct. Could we look at the change in society, the way we consume resources? Correct. And similarly, could we look at what science could do, what research funding, and each of these pathways have their own solution, right? So I've played this game numerous times and I got my students to play. But this particular screenshot comes from one of my class students. I think this is the student who solved it the first. Took about 2 weeks to solve, right? And took him 121 rounds, which means 121 years of simulation to solve the climate crisis. And he went with something called the global oasis. While the game itself, right, is only a simulation and does not mean if you follow these steps you'll actually avert climate crisis. The fact is that a couple of sessions in this game and talking about the climate crisis in this way meant they were connecting to so many more disciplines than they originally were, right? Than they originally were. So we were talking about economics, we were talking about industry, we were talking about science and technology, and all of this in a communication, right? So we were talking about virtual reality, we were talking about, is there the possibility of planet B, where, all of us could kind of go and colonize and probably move there. And we had some interesting discussions on what can make it really, what would colonizing a new planet actually change with, right? So the value of learning that is happening from something like this was off the charts, right? So how do we look at that? Okay. What can we do? So all of this is fine, I've come, I've spoken, right? But what can we do? Okay. So as parents, for those of you who who are parenting young people, who have young people in your lives, one thing to think about is, what is it that we can do? Because we know if video games are here to stay, what is it? How do we adapt to something? Right? So can we show an interest in what our children do with regards to leisure? Can we not disconnect the moment we realize, hey, they're playing something in their game, or hey, they are in their headphones, they don't have time for us? Can we not turn away on our end? Can we actually take a step forward and talk to them and engage in them? Correct. Can we find ways to share those spaces and find activities that would interest you and them? Correct? So this is something I've seen in the West a lot, and I don't know if it's that common in India. But a lot of families I know in the UK, for example, now spend 2 to 3 hour window playing Mario. They call it family Mario time or stuff like that. Right? And it's been something extremely popular. And it was interesting, but it also meant a lot of the parents knew what games the kids were playing, right? And it was almost like a family coming together kind of activity. And it was interesting to think of it. Right? The third element, because it's not just video games, there are also other digital leisure options, platforms like OTT, streaming cultures, that Even if you look at something like Instagram's Reels and try to understand why people spend so many hours on Reels, it would be important for us to understand what exactly Reels are, how do they function, what makes them so, I wouldn't use the word addicting, but what makes them so powerful that we lose track of time with them, right? And these are things to think about, correct? And is it possible for us to try to experience them before drawing conclusions, before saying, hey, this is not something that you're supposed to be engaging with. If you do this, who's going to do that, right? How are you going to get a job playing game, stuff like that? Can we kind of experience, can we figure out what is it that they're doing, give value to their experience, and then try to kind of common ground it. I think the big element here, this is something Professor Raman has been talking about. There's Devina attending to the session. Devina has been talking about as well. Digital media literacy. This is essential. And I think if we can take steps as parents to kind of understand what digital media can offer and try and understand what video games are, what are those spaces, probably then we are not just connecting or understanding what children are doing, but we are also aware of the possible challenges they're facing in those spaces. Okay, so as teachers, this one's a little more simpler, I guess. We need to stay open to new ideas for, disseminating information. Video games are those platforms; they are disseminating information. Depends on us to figure out what kind of information. Right. So that's why. So it's important for us not to tune out of this conversation. Okay? Can we use discussions in classrooms to kind of engage in also non-academic activities, not just stay limited to the academic and the next test and the next exam, because there's always going to be one. Okay, so the last bit is we are always going to be, because of the positions we have in society, going to be looked up for opinions, for expert advice and stuff. Okay, can we also have a more nuanced perspective? Okay, can we change the way we think about this? Right. So lastly, of course, as students, some of you are listening to this, students and you're tuning in, please know that games as such are designed to maximize play. They have been designed so that you spend as many hours in. Please know that. They're also been designed to make sure that you're engaged to the fullest. Okay. And of course, all of this is leading to, so even if you're playing a free game, to try and get you to spend some money. Right? So know these boundaries, know what the limitations are, and decide what is it that you want, right? So probably you decide how you experience sites of play. It's your activity of play. How do you think, Flo?